caterhamracer.com 420R Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7, and by Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and by Avon Tyres, on road, on track, on Avons, the official tyre supplier of Caterham Motorsport. Well, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in once more for some more Caterham esports style racing action. And we're here at the sharp end of the season, with not long to go before we get to the deciding factor of the championship and see who becomes the caterhamracer.com 420R champion for this first point scoring season. We're here at Donington Park, one of the best circuits in the country on the national circuit, once again mimicking the shortened calendar that we have in real life for Caterham Motorsport, as their upcoming rounds are just a couple of weeks away. We'll see at least one championship decided before the rest of the championships head off to their season finale at Snetterton, which is where we will be also as well. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson once again in the commentary box too. And Chris, looking at how things have been, at least in practice, in the cross pre-qualifying, we're into the qualifying session now, but we thought that Brands Hatch was close, and given the fact that it was close, given it's such a small circuit, it was something that was almost going to be a given. The fact that we had just in practice just now all but one car within a second of each other in terms of the times, and being so close as it already is in the first couple of laps in qualifying, means that if we thought Brands Hatch was hectic, I think even on a bigger, faster circuit like Donington, it might just be quite a special spectacle in the opening laps.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's always a great watch, Donington. It always breeds good car action, and Caterham's are no exception. In fact, they often have some of the best racing around Donington. They can literally make a pass around any corner on this track, and often do. But again, like we've said before on other tracks, as soon as you go side by side, you lose the momentum, and it is another momentum track. So yeah, watch for people going side by side, but then watch everyone behind catch up and then want to join in the action. It's not rare to see people going three wide, although it can be rare to see them coming out the other side, all facing the right direction.
Donington is one of those circuits where I've always found it never tends to produce a bad race in anything, whether it's a Caterham or a saloon car or a touring car or a single-seater or any other form of racing. Donington is one of these circuits where you usually are expected to get a good race in whatever turns up there, whether it's car, bike or anything else. So I think even in the esports world, it should produce the same once more. Just while qualifying is going on, it might be worth to also fill us in as to where we are in the championship hunt. We go into this penultimate evening of the season. Now you'll notice two sets of numbers on the screen here. The numbers on the left-hand side of each of the two tallies, the bigger and bolder numbers in white, those are the overall total points scored so far in the season. But now begins the sharper end of the season. We need to remind people that the drivers have to drop their worst two results, which means that the smaller, slightly greyer numbers on the right hand side that you can see, that's their scores after their worst two scores at the moment. So on overall and on drop scores, it is Steve McMaster who leads the way with 268 total points, but 206 on drop scores. Jalstad Cherney is then in second place, and then while James Murphy is fourth overall in terms of total points, as you can see, he is just slotting into third on drop scores ahead of Christian Zaruta. Now, two key names that are not here tonight: Christian Zaruta, who is off on holiday, so hopefully he's enjoying himself, and Paul Fernerhuff, who sadly is not feeling well, so fingers crossed that he gets well soon, and we'll hopefully see him back on the road so far. But in terms of what we've got for the championship tonight, most of the championship contenders are here, and this is going to be crucial for the likes of James Murphy and David Rome, possibly Tim Van Hee, who's been a little bit off the pace so far. But these guys, Chris, are going to be the ones that are primarily going to be looking to make up the ground on those who around them aren't here tonight, and therefore possibly might have to even use the rounds they're missing as drop scores. It means they might have a luxury of not dropping any points, but at the same time they're losing a bunch of points by not being here in the first place. Yeah, it just adds to all the intrigue, doesn't it? It's as ever, the easiest way to look at it is go fast, get the best result you can, and then you can't go wrong. If you start dwelling too much on drop scores and all those kind of things, then things can go wrong, because I've seen many a championship lost where someone relaxed a bit too much because they didn't think they had to do anything, and ultimately that's cost them the essential points. So yeah, just go fast, get a good result, and that's the best you can do, and like I say, make hay while these other guys are away. Speaking of drop scores and championship points and everything coming into play, we should give a mention to the real world for a moment, because we are on course at the moment to have our first champion-elect of 2020, and I say champion-elect because we haven't finished the season just yet, but we will do in one context in Caterham Motorsport for the academy drivers, because we have 2 championships, one for the green group and one for the white group, being such a big bunch of drivers. And at Brands Hatch just a couple of weekends ago, we did see the title almost wrapped up for Tom Cockrell, because he has enough points scored, which means that he doesn't have to do the last round. And subsequently, I have it on good information that he's not doing the last championship round, but he is going to appear for the end of season non-championship autumn trophy race, which is on the Sunday of the weekend at Donington Park, which will be next weekend. So that will mean that Tom's worst score will be a 0, which means he drops no points, but he'll enter the weekend 14 points ahead of the next driver. So whatever happens, if him not racing, doesn't matter what happens in the race and who scores what. If someone scores 2 victories with fastest laps and each gets the maximum score of points, someone will still have to drop points anyway in order to drop away. So effectively, Chris, in that sense, we kind of have our first almost champion, because we need to get to the end of Donington first to crown him. But a phenomenal effort for Tom, of course, and his first ever season of racing to be crowned champion. And to do that, there's not many people, whether a first-time racer in the academy or not, that can say they've been a champion in their first ever season of racing. That's quite a special achievement. Yeah,
in the academy, you guarantee that there's one person who's, their first championship and they are the champion. But not many people get to call themselves academy championship champion. You only get one shot at it. You can't have a repeat. You're not allowed to do it again. So you get one shot and one shot alone. And so there's very select few people that actually get to call themselves academy champion.
Absolutely. We haven't finished the white group just yet. We've still got a bit of a battle going on there after Taylor O'Flanagan took 2 victories at Brands Hatch, and he'll go to Donington Park with a 7-point lead. But that's real world Caterham racing. Back to the esports world, where we're watching the qualifying session. Just over 5 minutes to go, and it's points leader Steve McMaster, who is on provisional pole position by quite a hefty margin, 0.3 of a second here from James Murphy. Then Jaroslav Cherny, the Czech driver, who's up there on the top of the points. 4th is David Rowe, and 5th is then Emil Jaselink, who's having one of his best weekends so far, and whether that will translate into race performance or not remains to be seen. This man here, Tom Willis, who was last year's real life Academy White Group champion and is in the fight for the road sport title in real life this year. He's currently 6th fastest. And then it's Andy Parker in 7th place, followed by James Fowler and Blair McConaughey, 2 of Tom's key rivals from last year's Academy Championship. And then it's Guy Crawford back in 10th position, and then Tim Mann here a little further back than he would expect to be. And it was him and Steve Arnell that were both drivers that really showed their speed back at Brands Hatch, Chris. They were 2 drivers that really did stand out in terms of being those that made big leaps, and whether it was simply just the fact that they had the setup right, or simply just the fact that Brands Hatch was a circuit that really suited them and their driving style of the sim, both of them really put on some of their best performances of not just of the season, but of their participation in Caterham Racing, caterhamracer.com sim racing full stop. And they were very impressive at Brands Hatch. Whether they can translate that now into a bigger, wider, slightly faster circuit than Donington, at the moment doesn't appear to be the case, but as we know, qualifying is one matter, racing's an entirely different kettle of fish. Yeah, definitely. And also, Arnell has been showing well in pre-qualification, so he's been up there. It's just about now tying that lap together when it counts in qualifying. Donington's, as we see him drive off the circuit, so that's not going to help too much. Donington's one of those tracks where qualifying isn't the end of the world. Like I said earlier, it's easy to overtake, and often races are more a game of chess than actual. Like Brands Hatch, qualifying is definitely much more important than it is around here. We did see McMaster. He was originally just a fraction ahead, but he did pull out a lap just as that 5 minutes ago started, which has now put him 0.3 ahead, and 16.3 is a mega lap. I can tell you that's a very rapid time around here, and you can tell by the fact that Murphy, Cherney and Rowe are all trailing by 0.3. In fact, so is Jaselink. Like you say, a great performance from him, and the majority of the field within that magic second, so right down to 13th place within that 1 second gap. Yeah, Steve hasn't won a race so far yet since Thruxton. He managed to pick up the results. He was 3rd in race 1 at Brands Hatch, and then he looks like 5th in race 2. So he hasn't been on the podium. The weekend races he was slightly off the podium, but he'll look to try and put that right. And his qualifying performance so far does appear to be putting him in the right direction. Here's David Rowe, who hasn't won a 420R race so far this year. He's won in the Academy Championship, hasn't quite managed it in the top rank so far. And looking how close it is, it's pretty congested behind Steve McMaster. You've got 4 drivers set by what was roughly around about 0.5 of a second, or at least it was for a moment, until Jaroslav Cherny popped up and broke the chain, because he's now just under 1/4 of a second off McMaster to put himself onto the front row, just ahead of James Murphy now in 3rd place. So it's currently McMaster and Cherny who have the front row together. It's an all DPR second row with James Murphy and David Rowe, and then it's the Belgian Emil Jaselink in 5th quickest from Tom Willis in 6th, and it's Parker, Fowler, Crawford and McConaughey rounding out the top 10. We've got was due to have 18 cars, but we lost 2 from the tonight's race. There is also a B grid race going, which should have further 8 cars. There were 26 cars that pre-qualified on the server before tonight, and of course the top 18 normally go up. But out of those 18 that were set, 2 haven't been able to make it tonight, so we've just got a grid of 16. Steve Arnell is clearly listening to us because he's now popped up to 10th now into the top 10. Blair McConaughey a little off the pace in 11th, but he's only, I say only, 3/4 of a second off as well. So top 13 covered by less than the second, Chris. And we talked about this just before we came on live, about the fact that Donington Park is very much like Brands Hatch, a momentum circuit, if not a bit quicker, because there isn't really a circuit where you've got a big stop. Some can argue that maybe the Fogarty S at the end of the Dunlop Straight exiting Coppice is a big stop, but then again it's quite a fast chicane if you go through it quick enough in the right car. There isn't really one where you have to retest your brakes so much, so pretty much getting a rhythm around here is the key thing, because it's a little bit like Brands Hatch, where if you're in a tight group of cars and you get lost in the shuffle, it's not just like maybe a slower or a longer circuit where you might leave with one spot and that's it, make the time later on. If you're in a big pack of cars on such a quick circuit like this, where momentum, keeping up a rhythm is key, you lose a little bit of time, and again you're losing 2, 3, 4 spots in one go if you don't keep yourself in the chain and keep that speed up.
Yeah, the car positioning is absolutely vital through all these corners. Like you say, there is you're significantly on the brakes coming into the chicane here. However, the actual chicane itself is really quite wide and open, and it's still an extremely quick corner. You never drop below your third gear basically in your Caterham, and therefore it's still all about momentum, and that is why when we see people going side by side, it causes massive problems, because you can no longer take the natural line, which is the biggest, widest arc, and therefore the corners become much more acute, so you and the person you're going side by side with cannot go through that corner quickly, and that's why we see the trailing pack, even if people have a gap out in front, if they go side by side with the person that they're racing against, then that easily can be wiped out by the following pack.
It can, and of course that's why these guys are going to be on their toes, particularly on cars as fast as twitchy as these. We're looking at Tim Van, we were at least. He was in the Just Add Lightness sponsored car, one of our 3 very generous supporters of the 420R Championship. So once again, a big thank you to Design and Display Structures, to Avon Tyres, and to Just Add Lightness for supporting the series. The checkered flag has gone out on the qualifying session. There's someone's exploring track limits in the background behind Mark Bennett, as Mark heads down into the Fogarty S's for the last time to complete his final flying lap. He currently sits at the moment in 8th quickest, just over half a second off, and I think he was about to dip for the pit lane, but decided to hug the pit wall to see if he could improve his time, and decided no, he'll cross the line and complete that lap anyway. Here's Guy Crawford, 10th, just ahead of Steve McMaster, who's on provisional poles. He hops over the curbs, over the sausage curbing on the inside through the first part of the Fogarty S's. McMaster will get a small toe from Crawford. He goes across the line and won't improve his time. Neither will Guy Crawford, but there was an improvement there, I think, for Tim Vanny, who popped up into 9th fastest. So managed to get himself up onto the other side of the 5th row by the end of the session. So qualifying is over. The first of 2 15-minute races are on their way very shortly. And this is how we can expect the first of 2 15-minute races to line up on the grid. It is Steve McMaster, championship leader, both on total and drop scores, who will start from pole position. And he will have his main rival, Jaroslav Cherny, alongside him. So the top 2 in the championship are top 2 on the grid for this race. Then it's 2 drivers who will look to make up ground for the drivers around them who are not here. James Murphy, who will start in 3rd, alongside his DPR team boss, David Rowe. But it's one of his personal best performances in qualifying for Emil Jaselic, who will start in 5th on the 3rd row of the grid, alongside Tom Willis. And it's Andy Parker and Mark Bennett who make up the 4th row. And then the second of our 2 Belgians, Tim Van, with some work to do from 9th. He starts alongside the ever-impressive Guy Crawford in 10th position. 11th fastest for James Fowler. Welcome back to him. He's not seen him for a while, but he gets the trio of Academy White Group graduates in 2019 at the top of the table back together on track. He starts alongside Steve Arnell on the 6th row of the grid. Bit of a disappointing session for both Blair McConaughey and Chris Skillicorn. I expect them to be a little bit higher, but such is the competition of the 420Rs, they will start back on the 7th row of the grid. And then it'll be Tom McEwing and Mike Hilton who will start back on row 8. And of course, Paul Fonahuff, who was due to race, but sadly not feeling too well tonight. And Andy Steele, who again was due to race, but he looks to be otherwise occupied. So 16 cars all set to go. Everyone just popping onto the grid with just a couple of minutes left. So looking at what we've seen so far across the pre-qualifying servers and practice and qualifying, In terms of the form we're seeing from drivers, is it very much as you would have expected in terms of who's there, or do you think there's possibly one or two drivers that have caused a bit of an upset, at least in qualifying, based on how they might or might not have looked over the course of the week, getting themselves onto the grid?
Yeah, we've seen McMaster dominating pre-qualifying, him and Murphy. So Murphy being, basically, I was expecting to see this grid. Cherney has popped up there as he always does, and has put himself there on the front row. So everyone is kind of in the places I'd expect them to be. And I honestly can't see much beyond McMaster at the moment. He has been, let's say, absolutely flying along and dominant in pre-qualifying and all through the practice sessions and test sessions that we've had. He's also been right up there. So, I think everyone is where I'd expect to see them. But as I said to you before we started commentary proper, it's going to be about whether can they get round this first lap altogether, or is someone going to get caught out in a melee, like say the side-by-side moment, and then everyone trying to be on the same piece of tarmac as we've seen a couple of rounds before.
The age-old saying, whether it's real or sim racing, is that you can't win the race on the first lap, nor at least the first corner. So I think everyone's got to be careful of that, particularly the two guys on the front row. If they're going to go side by side down towards turn one, they've got to realise that they still have one set of rounds still to go at Snetterton. They've got this race and another one coming up straight after, and then two more races. 4 races to pretty much settle the championship either way. There is overall a 9-point gap between them on points and a 7-point gap on the drop scores. Let's see which way fate swings tonight. So the first of 2 races for the caterhamracer.com 420R Championship is all set to go. The red lights are on. McMaster on pole on the left, Cherney on the front row on the right. Let's see who wins the sprint down towards Redgate Corner. They get away pretty cleanly as they get away from the line. Looks as though it's a pretty even start up on the front row. Everyone getting away, one car struggling at the back a little bit, but Cherney seems to have got the better second phase at the start, and he heads into Redgate Corner, sweeping across the nose of Steve McMaster and gets himself in front, crucially into the lead, exiting Redgate Corner. Now the next shot's going to be crucial. Touch wood, I don't think anyone's got through with any problems. So it looks as though as we come through, it is Cherney who leads the way from McMaster in second place. It's Murphy up to third. David Rowe is slotting in front of him, which is selling into fourth position, and Tom Willis is fifth. So the top 6 appear to be in pretty much the same order they started. Everyone else appears to be getting through okay. So far, so good through the kink at Starkeys, up through Schwanz Curve, and then under braking for this first of 2 uphill corners heading into McLean's. A little bit of a look up the inside there from Steve McMaster. One car getting sideways in the mid-pack as well, and 2 cars, I spoke to you soon, 2 cars already off into the gravel in the background, so they're trying to struggle back onto the circuit. Through Coppice for the first time and onto that Dunlop straight, and it is crucially Cherney who has the advantage with McMaster in tow. But it appears as though, Chris, so far as they head down towards the S for the first time, McMaster, crucially, is not letting the Czech driver get away, and he really is sticking on his rear roll cage with the 2 DPR guys giving chase. Looks as though potentially we've got a breakaway top 4 here if this thing starts to play out the way that it appears to be doing so at the end of this first lap.
Yeah, hopefully all the down the left hand side will get all the scoring now. It didn't kick in for the lap, so it was getting a bit worrying there to see what was going on, but we definitely saw Arnell and Skillicorn, I think, going off before, and I've just seen Mike Hilton going through the pits, so maybe he got a drive through for a jump start. We saw a slow start, so maybe that was all caused by that. McMaster is definitely putting that massive pressure on, so Cherney got the whole shot into that first corner, got round, and it looks like McMaster is thirsty to get past him, but hasn't managed to do so yet. As you say, it was looking like the top 4 have broken away, and Murphy is definitely in his own little battle trying to catch up with these 2. But David Rowe has now dropped back and looks like he's going to be fighting with Jaselink and Willis. Jaselink are getting a great start from his high starting point, so that clearly wasn't just a qualifying flash in the pan as we see David Rowe drifting wide again.
Also, Emma Jaselink is under threat from Tom Willis back in 5th and 6th position, but this is the main battle we need to focus on, of course. And the key thing which James Murphy's got to make sure he doesn't do here is he can't afford to be stuck in no man's land. As now Steve McMaster decides he's going to go early up the inside of Jaroslav Cherney. I think Cherney smartly says, "Go on then, Steve, you go through, rather than try and fight it early on in this race. I'll try and sit behind and get you back into Redgate Corner." So exiting through Fogarty S's, the key thing is here, James Murphy has to stay in touch with these 2 drivers and not get in the risk of being in no man's land, because otherwise, if he does, then he'll be starting to not only lose time to the cars behind, but also to the cars in front, and not being able to make the most of it. Steve McMaster with the fastest lap of the race on the first proper flying lap around this time by, and he managed to do it whilst also taking the lead down the back straight. And through Hollywood and down into the Craner curves for the 3rd time, and it is McMaster in the Ford GT40 Tribute livery, the Ken Miles style livery, which is the duck egg blue with the red front wings. And he's got car number 1 on his car. He's number 1 in the championship so far. And he'd love to be number 1 by the time he ends the season. But the man behind him, Jaroslav Cherny, is second in the points. He's only 7 behind on drop scores. It's 206 right now for McMaster and 199 after dropping their worst 2. McMaster putting 2 wheels onto the grass isn't going to help his course to hold on to the lead. And the crucial thing is also, Chris, James Murphy is staying there and he's not allowing these two to get away, because he knows if these two keep on fighting each other, the easier it's going to be for him to make an attack. And if you also look in the background, not only is David Rowe starting to catch up, but he might also be bringing him with him as well.
Yeah, Cherny definitely let McMaster go through that first one, sort of following my advice almost, which is, let the person go and then you don't have to go side by side through the track, through the corner. But you can see that actually that let Murphy catch up. But McMaster has proved to be the quickest, and as long as Cherny can sit in his wheel tracks, I think they will start pulling away from Murphy again, although McMaster got Redgate wrong that time, and you can see now all the momentum's with Cherny again, so it puts that pressure right back on him.
We also saw as well, the fastest lap of the race was put in by David Rowe. He's making the most of whatever clear air he's got, trying to follow into his teammate James Murphy's wheel tracks. And Murphy is lapping fractionally faster than the 2 cars in front, because he was just a few tenths quicker than Cherny. What's not going to help him is if he starts to lose time. As now the 2 leaders go side by side. This is the perfect view from James Murphy as Cherny goes round the outside into Schwant's curve. It'll give him the inside for McLean's. And so McMaster does slot through. He looks for that switchback on the exit, which is just about working. Cherny's trying to squeeze him for the inside line if he can. But McMaster's got track position, and now Murphy sees this is his chance to pounce. He's going to head onto the inside line, exiting McLean's and Coppice, and now he's in the draft of Cherny. He's in that crucial half a second gap in a second quarter. You need to be within half a second in these cars to gain the advantage of the toe, and he's got it here. And so far at the moment, Cherny's boxed in. He's got Murphy behind him, McMaster was to his right, and now he's caught in between McMaster in front and Murphy behind him. And with David Rowe also setting a good pace here, we really have got a very rapid quartet here at the front, who have pulled away from Emma Giselle, who's having his own battle for 4th, 5th position with Tom Willis and Andy Parker. And now as the 2 leaders go back into combat again, this is the main battle for the lead here. The 4 highest placed drivers in the championship who are here tonight, both on drop scores and also on overall scores, battling for the win of the podium. This is exactly what we wanted to see on this first race at Donington Park as we head to the sharp end of the season, Chris.
Yeah, brilliant. The cream always rises to the top, don't they say that? Well, they say it better than I actually said it out loud then, but never mind. The battle is here, exactly what we want to see, and it's ever so close. And yeah, again, the skill levels by these 3 drivers is brilliant, and we had the perfect onboard shot from James, giving us all the action from his point of view and just showing how he was able to catch up as soon as they started battling. Brought him and David Rowe straight back in the action.
It was just close than the real 420R cars, because in the real life John Byrne runs away with it all, but can't blame him for being as quick as he is. But I've been intrigued to see how he gets on in a sim caterer, if he ever gets an invite to have a go in one of these sim cars and go up against these guys. If he's as quick as he is in the sim as he is in real life, it'd be quite entertaining to watch. Meanwhile, our sim 420R races are heading through the Fogarty S's to end another lap, and a little bit of a wiggle there from Jaroslav Cherny mid-corner, and now David Rowe is keeping in touch with them. Top 4 is covered by, I can't tell just yet, but looking at lap time, the fastest man out of the 3 was in fact James Murphy, who set a personal best, and he was the only one into the 1:16, so he is currently the man to watch on track as McMaster again puts 2 wheels onto the exit curve across the grass on the exit of Redgate Corner as they come into the corner curves, and again it gives Cherny the incentive to carry the momentum all the way down to the bottom of the hill at the old hairpin. Murphy's keeping a watching brief, as is Rowe. As the rest of the field coming through, we saw just selling in 5th position as Cherny tried to get the undercut on the exit of Old Hairpin. He's now going to pull himself up alongside around the outside of Schwant's curve to get himself the track position he wants into McLean's. Can't quite manage it under brakes. And again, all this is doing is bringing James Murphy to play here, who's now being squeezed to the edge of the track by Cherny. Murphy goes the other way to get the undercut, again exiting Coppice, but Cherny's now too busy trying to get up the inside of McMaster here to try and get the lead back again. They're side by side for the lead. Murphy's in the mix as well, and McMaster tries to cover off the line from Cherny here, who will definitely try and go to the inside line if he's got to move on, which it looks like he has. Murphy's also in the toe of the leading car, up into the Fogarty S's, into the right-hander, and Cherny is back into the lead. But I suspect that if McMaster gets a bit bulked on the exit here, Chris, he might not just lose the lead, he could be in danger of losing 2nd, and if Rowe's pace is anything to go by, maybe even 3rd.
Yep, just got to watch that gap doesn't extend. We've seen Cherny, when he gets in front, he can become a metronome and really pull it, but I can't see that happening tonight, and woe betide anyone trying to call who's going to win this one. This is an impossible thing. These 4 drivers are going absolutely hammer and tong at this. It's great to watch.
Well, driver could also be a factor, looking at his fact he's just at the fastest lap of the race. Emil Jaselic, who is in 5th position, he is 2.6 seconds back, but he's making full use of the clear track he's got in front of him to put in some quick lap times, because everyone else in front was setting 117s and 118s, being so focused on getting caught up with each other that they're all just slowing each other up, and it might well bring the rest of the cars behind into play. And I say that, at the same time, they do still appear to be pulling away from the top four as the road gets a little bit of understeer going through McLean. He was a little too quick through the first part of that corner, and he's dropped a car length or so behind the top three. As we continue to watch from the onboard view of David Rowe, once again it's a battle on for the lead, and it's roles reversed because the hunters become the hunted, and this time it's McMaster's turn to go to the inside line. They are side by side on the run back towards Fogarty S's, and McMaster breaks out a little bit later. And Jaroslav Shez after you, Steve, and up through to Fogarty S's, and the dance happens all over again. Onto the pit straight, better exit from Cherney. He pulls alongside. Murphy is just outside that half-second margin, so he's not quite there just yet. I think it's a new fastest lap of the race from McMaster. It is, so that's quite impressive. On 16.6, even though he was in the middle of passing Cherney once again, and also in his wheel tracks for the most of that lap as well. So it just shows that in many cases, Chris, even whether you're in clear air or even tucked up behind another rival, if you've got the pace to do so on a quick lap, you can put it together, even if it seems as if you're in close combat like with your rival, like he is right now.
Yeah, these guys, like I said, they've got such a that 3/10 odd advantage over the following pack that actually, yes, they are pulling away, and these two are just showing how fast they are. One thing to watch out for is the final Fogarty chicane. At the moment, they are clobbering the sausage curb. Now, there is a track sensor behind that sausage curb, and if they go too far over it, it will cause a cut penalty. And at that point, they actually have to slow down fairly rapidly before the start-finish line, otherwise they will get a penalty. So just watch for that. It's not, they're cutting it fine, and it's, as we see Cherney going up the inside again, they're cutting it fine, and if they get that wrong, it could cause them all sorts of trouble. Ooh, it's Clive on the exit, and James has got a lot of momentum, but he couldn't use it. He's got his tail end stuck out.
Yeah, he got held up by the fact that McMaster was trying to get himself, again, an undercut on Cherney on the exit of the corner. Again, couldn't pull it off. And now McMaster will go to the outside line here as he looks to go round the outside of Redgate corner. It's not impossible, but he's going for it. They go wheel to wheel on the exit. Now, if he can stay alongside him, it'll put him on the inside line for the first part of the Craner curves. But for the second part, it'll put him on the outside heading into Old Hairpin. Murphy gets getting back into the mix here. So is David Rowe. McMaster gets over the curb. Cherney somehow is still alongside, but he has to capitulate and lets McMaster go round the outside into the Old Hairpin with a very impressive move. And now look at James Murphy in the black and orange car number 3. He wants in on his lead battle too. He gets pushed out wide by Cherney. He's also under threat from David Rowe, who's lurking around somewhere in the mirrors. There he is, just there in 4th position, the black and green car. And David Rowe, remember, hasn't won a 420R race so far this season. But as far as I can see, the top 3 in the race so far have won at least once. So pretty intense so far at this front of the field. And Rowe hasn't let these 3 get away either. And incredibly, I haven't even looked at the time. We've got 3.5 minutes to go. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely, what a brilliant race. Let's keep that going right into the last 3 minutes. They have been nose to tail. I apologise to all the other drivers for not bringing them to the broadcast so far, but hopefully this race will carry on, and it'll be a good choice to make, and we'll catch up with them after to see how they went on. But yeah, brilliant racing so far. Let's keep this going.
Keep an eye also on Emil Jaselic, because he's got the gap down to 1.3 seconds to David Rowe in 4th position, so he's not too far away. And given the fact that he's got 3 minutes to go here, and a lap time is roughly around about 1 minute 13 in the fastest cars in this one, we've got roughly 2 or 3 laps to go. Jaselic's case, if he carries this on, might even make it 5 for a podium place if he plays his cards right. As they head into the Old Hairpin again, still McMaster from Cherney, from Murphy, and then from David Rowe in 4th position. Jaselic is just there, 5th car in his shot, the sort of black and yellow Team Lotus or Caterham style livery. And then Tom Willis having a quiet race in 6th position. Blair McConaughey's up to 7th. He started just outside the top 10, but he's managed to climb back up into 7th. Then it's Andy Parker from Mark Bennett, and then it's James Fowler rounding out the top 10. So on top 3, head through McLean's, and a wide run through Coppice might just give Cherney the momentum he needs to put himself alongside. It wasn't a great run through Coppice for the championship leader, and now Jaroslav Cherney might sense another chance to pounce with 2.25 minutes to go. He's got the outside line, but the Master sweeps across under braking, and Murphy tries to stick his nose up the inside for second. The Czech driver had it covered as they come up through Fogarty S's onto the pit straight. They've got, I would say, 2 laps to go, and they have to go across the line with 2 minutes and 2 seconds to go. So 2 more times around the national circuit. Cherney peeks out, has a look, can't quite get the move done there. And again, Murphy just staying close, tries to take advantage as he comes out to Redgate corner, and that might be the opportunity he needs. He tries to put himself alongside. Cherney shows him the grass on the run through Hollywood into the Craner curves. So a little mistake there from Cherney, and what that seems to have done, Chris, it was only a small mistake running wide, but crucially, it's put him outside that half-second margin to keep the tone. So it just shows, again, particularly on a circuit like Donington Park, and I know we talk about it a lot, but momentum on a circuit like Donington is absolutely key. You put 2 wheels onto the grass on the exit of Redgate, and he's outside that draft range, and under massive pressure from James Murphy, all in the space of half a lap.
Yeah, and importantly, he's having to go defensive in many ways now. So actually, the 2 behind McMaster are going to be slowing themselves down. It'll let David Rowe back into it, as he was looking like he might be coming under threat from Giselic, but that seems to have faded a little bit in the last lap. But it has given McMaster that tiny breathing space, and is that enough to see him through to the end of this race?
Well, we'll have to find out. We're coming up to the end of the race now. The last lap is about approaching here. We've got 55 seconds on the clock, so when they go across the line, this would be, if it was an American race, the white flag. They would get one more time around. So McMaster does indeed have that lead, but again, Cherney's inside that half second now. He's got himself back in there, even though he was 0.2 of a second slower. And they come into Redgate corner for the last time. Still the status quo. Line astern first to fourth. Still McMaster who leads it from Cherney in second. Then Murphy in third. David Rowe in fourth. And then Selic's charge to catch up with these first 4. Appears to have plateaued at about 1.5, 1.6 seconds. So not making up much more time as the pace of the top 4 has just been increased a little more in these last couple of laps. But now with 15 seconds to go, it looks as though, touch wood, and I stress that point greatly, it looks as though McMaster has it set, but with a half a lap to go, Chris, who knows what could happen.
Yeah, as soon as these guys stopped weighing side by side, that's when Giselic started fading back again. He just hasn't quite got those few tenths he needs, so I think he is out of the action. David Rowe looks like he's out of the action. The action is very much for second place as Murphy just trying to get through, and in fact giving a little love tap there as he goes round McLean's and onto the final straight.
If he needs to make the move, it's going to have to be heading into the Fogarty S's or out of it onto the pit straight, into the chicane for the last time, and it looks as though the championship leader is about to get back to winning ways for the first time since Thruxton. He's been under so much pressure battling Cherney throughout the race, but it is going to be victory number 4 of the season for Steve McMaster. He picks up victory in race number 1 here tonight of the 420R Championship at Donington Park. It's second place for Jalstan Cherney, who does just hold off James Murphy in the end. David Rowe comes across in 4th, and it's Jan Selic's picking up 5th. Tom Willis and Blair McConaughey with a rather quiet 6th and 7th for them. Andy Parker 8th, Mark Bennett 9th, and James Fowler running out the top 10. And it's 11th place for Tim Van Heat, 12th place for Tom McEwing, and then it's Arnell, Crawford and Skillicorn. And I think Mike Hilton should be on track somewhere, but he's quite much further down, so he will cross the line very shortly as everyone does the typical sim racing thing and throws it into the gravel, as you would do. So, an entertaining first race, plenty to talk about in terms of the lead battle, lots of action going on, but in the end, it's points leader Steve McMaster who extends his advantage at the top of the table by picking up his 5th race win, because he took 2 victories at the first rounds at Alton Park, and then he took 2 wins at Thruxton. So yes, it is his 5th win of the season. So Steve McMaster wins from Jaroslav Cherney in 2nd place. James Murphy also takes crucial points away from Christian Zaruta, and he almost certainly moves now into 3rd place in the championship as a result of Christian's absence. It's 4th for David Rowe, who should also benefit as well. And it's 5th for Emma Giselic, 6th for Tom Willis. Blair McConaughey picks up 7th after he qualified out the top 10. And it's Andrew Parker, Mark Bennett and James Fowler who round out the top 10. Tim Van Heat, a little bit disappointing, but he has to settle for 11th place ahead of Tom McEwing in 12th. But it's Steve Arnell, Guy Crawford off the pace, so he must have got involved in some of the incidents in the first couple of laps deeper in the field that we may or may not have seen. And then Chris Skillicorn and Mike Hilton round out the 16 finishes that we had, Mike Hilton being a few seconds back after he pitted at the end of the opening lap. So, main talking point of race number 1 was, of course, the 4-way scrap we had for the lead between the top 4 races, won by McMaster. But I think it's obvious thing for me to say, but I think McMaster will admit that to say that was easy would be, quite frankly, a horrendous misjudgment of character in terms of how he felt about that race, because That was certainly not an easy feat, particularly when you had Shirley and McMaster swapping positions, and two very hungry DPR cars behind him trying to steal those places away from them.
Yeah, and after such a dominant position in pre-qualifying and throwing in those really good lap times, I imagine he was expecting he might get an easier ride. When you look at the final gap of half a second, it sounds almost leisurely, doesn't it? But that doesn't tell the whole story. James Murphy was definitely quicker than Cherney in that closing stages, especially as Cherney had to go defensive, but he did a sterling defensive job, didn't he? So well-deserved second place there for Cherney, and Rowe just couldn't quite catch up when it was crucial. And 2 laps to go, I thought he might still get himself back in that battle, but he just kept dropping away, didn't he, by those few tenths. And everyone behind, it's hard to say what happened because we were so concentrating on that front battle that we didn't really get to see, but great to see Jesselink solidify that result, and Tom Willis and Blair McConaughey, like you say, coming through the field. Parker getting a great result as well, so good job by all those guys. And can we do it all again?
Well, a second. We've got a few more seconds before they start to get them gridded up with about 2 minutes to go. And yeah, if there wasn't anyone you had in that first race who did have quite a good battle, please do tell us about it afterwards, because again, forgive us, there was so much going on at the front of the field where the main championship contenders were that rather unintentionally we didn't show anyone else really in that sense, because there was that much action, and it was one of those battles where you didn't really want to look away from the screen for more than a couple of seconds, otherwise your order would have changed threefold. So quite intriguing. Now, there's a stat here which either will be kept up or will be broken here in this second race, because since the start of the season, at every single race weekend, whoever's gone on to win the first race has then gone on to win the second race. That's a key stat. So the question now has got to be is Steve McMaster, if he wants to keep that run of the season going, he has to win this second race to keep the record up of drivers winning the first race and then using pole for the second to be able to do so. It's the same front row as it was for race 1. Of course, the front row for race 2 is not only how they qualified in race 1, but of course where they finished, because the finishing positions from race 1 determines where you start for race 2. So it's still McMaster on the left-hand side on pole position, and it's Jaroslav Cherney, the Czech driver, alongside in the red car alongside him. But in the 2 DPR cars of Murphy and Rowe alongside in the second row, crucial thing behind them, though, is you've got Emma Jesselink in 5th, but then you've also got Tom Willis and Blair McConaughey starting higher up than they did. And seeing how Blair was able to pick his way through the field, and maybe through 1 or 2 mishaps along the way, he was able to get himself up into 7th place in the end. So starting higher up the grid, Chris, would possibly give the theory that he might well, if he plays his cards right and gets a good start, could possibly get himself into a top 5 place, and that would do his championship points wonders, given the fact that it would certainly help him jump a couple of spots from drivers who are struggling a bit in their points totals tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And again, those, I think him and Jesselink, their main task has to be stick to the tail end of one of these lead groups and then get brought along with them, because I think they just don't quite have the raw pace tonight to actually bridge gaps. But if they can stick in that toe and just remain patient, then they have got a good chance to stick with this lead battle, and then it's anyone's guess at the final.
Certainly will be. 16 drivers in the mix, but the red lights are out to come up. Let's see if it's going to be 2 from 2 for McMaster, or if Cherney or anyone else can dethrone him from the top step of the podium. We're away for race number 2. It's another equal launch from the front row, and I think yet again it's going to be Cherney that will get the whole shot into Redgate Corner, as it was in race 1. He takes the outside line. McMaster this time thinks not quite. He'll break a little deeper into the apex, and he will stay side by side, and it's 2 by 2 on the exit of Redgate through Hollywood, but McMaster this time has kept the lead. So unlike Cherney, who managed to get the run on him into Redgate Corner the first time, McMaster's learned his lesson and held his ground and held on to the lead as they head into the old hairpin. They're 2 by 2 in the mid-pack as there's a bit of position swapping going on. They're 3 abreast almost. Tim Van He was involved in that in the middle, getting squeezed between 2 cars. He was very careful not to get caught up in that. That was Steve Arnell was 1 car and possibly Chris Skillicorn was the other, I think. But they've all got through so far unscathed. This is where we had a couple of the cars off at McLean's last time at the start of race 1. No such dramas this time. A couple of the cars being pushed out onto the curbs further back, which I think that's again Tim Van He, but up through McLean's. He's still Tim Van He. He's having a great battle here going on with Steve Arnell, already for 9th and 10th positions, but on the run here towards the Fogarty S's for the first time, and already Jaroslav Cherney is not prepared to sit here and waste time, because he's going for it here on the inside line into Fogarty S's. There was a move behind as well, I think, with possibly Andy Parker making a move on Blair McConaughey. 1 car's had an issue on the exit, and that is Andy Parker, so it looks as though whatever move he tried for the lead didn't quite work. But now he's something unique. James Murphy thinks, right, I sat behind Cherney for all this race for race 1. Now I want a turn for second place here to try and go for the lead. He was incredibly quick in that first race, and he really is trying to hold on as best he can. David Rowe is going with him, but also crucially, Chris, so is Emil Jesselink. So we've now got a 5-car train for the lead, Although Cherney is starting to lose a little bit of ground. He's not outside that half-second margin of McMaster, but he is staying just about in that range to keep him in touching distance to possibly get a tow. But he's also got a lot of attention behind him to focus on as well.
Yeah, Gisselling just not able to, as we see James Murphy go up the inside of the Schwanz curve, but that's the outside of the McLean, so that's not going to work out for him. And David Rowe is now putting the pressure on. This gives Gisselling that chance, that sniff of being able to keep up with them and maybe keeping with this battle for the race. But James Murphy then pushed out wide, so David Rowe seeing the opportunity up the inside around Coppice, and it's actually heading out down the straight, looking like he's going to make that move over James Murphy, but it's going to be 3 wide going into the chicane. I think I'm going to close my eyes.
Oh, I tell you what, David Rowe was threading the eye of the needle there. It is going to be 3 abreast into Fox. Yes, something's got to give. Murphy goes round the outside of Rowe, and Rowe's being very ambitious there. He gets elbowed out wide. Look at the benefactor. Emma Gisselling pounces on the pair of them. It's going to be 3 abreast for third down the pit straight. Gisselling on the right. It's Murphy who slots in behind him. To the left is David Rowe in the black and green car. Again, it's 3 abreast into Redgate. They all go to the apex together. Rowe tries to get there first, but he goes a little bit too wide. He loses out 1 spot to Murphy. Might lose a second to Gisselling if he's not careful. Has to get his foot down to try and defend the position. They're going to be banging wheels through Hollywood into the Craner curves. But I think Murphy Rowe will just about hold on, or will he? Because Gisselling is being ever brave here on the inside line. He holds the side-by-side line through the old hairpin, slots in behind. But I have to say, Chris, he's not short on guts, is he? Because he definitely went for that as hard as he could. He's not finished yet.
No, he's absolutely doing it. He got his opportunity by clinging on in there, didn't he? So he got his opportunity and he was going to make the most of it. Just want to point out, look at the gap at the front there. McMaster has definitely been able to benefit from that 3 wide moment going into Fogarty, and that's not surprising really. But yeah, Gisselling absolutely is always drifted a bit wide there, and actually we're going to see McConaughey come through.
Then watch McConaughey. Oops, 1 car's off the road. Is that back a couple of positions? It might be Mark Bennett, I think, as he's dropped back to 9th position behind James Fowler. So he's lost a little bit of a gap in the process. He's down to 10th now because he's lost out to Guy Crawford. So the crucial thing is, as you rightly pointed out, Chris, is that Steve McMaster has got that 1.4 second lead now. And again, it's like we said, whoever wins race 1 usually in these races in a weekend will usually start from pole and go on to win race 2. And at the moment, McMaster is looking to keep up that 100% record of the chain of results. So whether that gap will start to come down or not, we'll have to wait and see if Cherney can make the most of any more superior pace throughout the rest of the race in clean air. So incredibly, we've already had a third of the race gone already. It feels like we've only had a couple of laps, but such as the entertainment being put on at the moment, as we see Avon Tyres in there for 6th position. And we said also to watch for Blair McConaughey. He's done exactly what he said we said he needed to do, which is to keep himself in the lead to tow with a couple of these cars, and he's done that with David Rowe now, so making up for a poor qualifying. It certainly does prove one thing, that while some drivers might not be all that great in qualifying, as Blair McConaughey's showing right now, you can be a great race driver to pick your way through the field. Case in point, Blair McConaughey slots up the inside, is up now into 4th position, so on an open couple of laps from Blair.
Yeah, he oftentimes has had disappointing qualifying sessions, but has made it count in the race, and he's still pressuring David Rowe coming down here. I think we should also make it a date for or a note in our diaries that there is a car between himself and Tom Willis, so that is a rare, something rare as well that we're seeing.
It's very true. Usually both in real life and in the sim, where one driver is Blair McConaughey, the other one, Tom Willis in this case, is usually quite close. But at the moment, he's more bothered with trying to get past James Fowler, who he was battling with the Academy White title last year all season, as well as Blair McConaughey goes to make it 2 for the price of 1. It looks as though Rowe went too deep into Redgate corner, and at the time McConaughey was also trying to make it past Gisselling anyway, and so that means he's managed to pass both of them. He's up into 4th place again. That was quite a frantic sequence. It's again looking up the inside of Gisselling goes David Rowe. The two are going to go side by side again as they did through the Craner curves a couple of laps ago, and it looks as though, yes, it is going to be Gisselling that holds on in front, or at least he tries to. Anyway, up and over the curb. Tries to look around the outside again if he can, wheel to wheel as they come through McLean's corner. And I think Rowe has to capitulate and let him through. But that was quite a move there from McConaughey. He saw the opportunity, watched Rowe going wide. He was already passing Gisselling and thought, well, if you're going to run wide, I'll pass both of you if you want.
3 laps we've seen David Rowe actually go wide and deep into Redgate and not be able to slow up. That one was all by himself, and if you were seeing this in real life, you'd think that maybe he's got some sort of braking problem going into there, but as we know, the brakes don't fade or don't go away. It's just a right foot problem, not able to slow that car down. So he is looking hopefully he's lost a lot of time because of those 3 wide manoeuvres, and I'm guessing he's quite desperate. We've seen it looks quite desperate at the moment to try and get back to that lead group, and at the moment it's not looking likely, is it?
No, it's one of those things where if you start to make mistakes, you start to let it get the better of you. You start to get frustrated. The more frustrated you get, the more mistakes you make, which gets you more frustrated, and it's a vicious cycle that you have to try and break out of as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you'll just find yourself tumbling down towards the bottom of the top 10 and beyond. So David Rowe needs to calm down and get back into a rhythm here in order to get himself back into the top 5 and possibly back past Blair McConaughey, because one crucial thing is Blair's not been able to get away from these two so far. Looking back at the further back in the field here with a good battle that's going on, this is now Mike Hilton scrapping away with Andy Parker and Tom McEwen. That was good timing because he just caught them with a big sideways moment there through Starkey's corner and up into Schwantz. There was a bit of contact. Speaking of moments, here we go again. And this is now the order's almost completely changed for a second here. It's all gone crazy because now Blair McConaughey has now reunited with Tom Willis and James Fowler as the three academy guys are back on track together. Edward Juselnik is now back down into 7th position, and David Rowe somehow, Chris, has been shuffled down to 8th. So it was off camera, but trust us to look away for another moment to miss the action towards the front. But from what we saw there, with the battle that was going on for 4th, has now become a 5-car scrap for 4th down to 8th.
They must have heard the commentary. McConaughey and Tom Willis are now next to each other again, and Fowler's there for good thing. I think something must have happened up into McLean's. Obviously, David going deep into that corner again. Just not working. Now we've got a clump. They are closer than they are on the grid. This is ridiculous. I don't know how you call this. This is immense stuff to watch.
Sensational to watch, but again, the old bosom chums on and off the track, Blair McConaughey and Tom Willis, back at it again, but with each other on track together. As we say, they're almost inseparable, like the two, like Morecambe and Wise. Where one goes, the other one tends to follow, and it's definitely this case here. But now we're seeing this very intriguing battle here, where James Fowler seems to have almost rudely inserted himself into the battle between Edward Juselnik and David Rowe. He now wants to fire it up the inside of Juselnik into McLean's, and it hasn't quite worked. Round goes the Belgian. I think there was contact with Fowler there. That's trying to benefit as a result of that David Rowe. Looks to the outside into Coppice corner, but I'm afraid looking at it, I think I caught it just on the glimpse of the camera there, Chris. It looks as though it was quite an ambitious move from James Fowler, but in the end didn't quite pay off, and it was Juselnik that paid for the price as a result.
Yeah, it's definitely a side-by-side wheel-to-wheel contact there, which then just unsettled the rear of the 420R, and these things, once they do get unsettled at the rear, they tend to spin around, and that's what we saw. So it's a shame for Juselnik that he's out of that intense battle, but the intense battle does continue here with James Fowler now really getting sticking it in there with David Rowe. He didn't have an invite, did he? He suddenly appeared from nowhere, but he got it through the bouncer and into the door, and he's having fun dancing away on the dance floor.
He's been swamped by academy graduates from last year's white group, because he's been passed by McConaughey, then by Willis, and now by Fowler. So he's not certainly looking to find them all that popular. He's going to dive up the inside again to try and re-pass Fowler. Goes over the curb on the inside, showing how much he wants that position back. He just about gets it. And look, he's also cropping onto the tail of them. So old mate Guy Crawford, who thinks, right, I've got an opportunity here. I want to put myself into the fight. Let's see if I can have a go. And he really is going for it. As James Fowler tries the same move he tried it on, I think, last lap, minus contact, which appears to have worked temporarily. But now Rowe gets the better exit off the corner, heads into Coppice corner, into the right-hander. Oh, and Fowler goes round the outside. There was contact. Round goes David Rowe. He collects the innocent Gavin Crawford. And unfortunately, Guy Crawford did it again. Guy Crawford, who unfortunately loses positions. And whilst David Rowe's race starts to go downhill, we look back to the top 3, who have pretty much spread out quite substantially here. And we saw Steve McMaster, I caught a couple of laps ago, had set a new fastest lap, which means that he certainly looks to be pretty comfortable in front to the tune of 2.3 seconds. And Cherney is almost 2 seconds ahead of this man, James Murphy. So whilst there's been calamity going on for 4th place downwards, Chris, the top 3 are usually rather civilised. Yeah,
it's a completely different atmosphere at the front here, isn't it? It's rather tame, really. So they're obviously going rapidly, but certainly we've lost the nose to tail nature of the previous round. But nose to tail is still what's happening deep in the field. So I think we should just concentrate here where the action is.
Yeah, it's looking pretty close actually for 4th position, because Glenn McConaughey and Tom Willis are only 0.3 of a second away. So again, where there's one, you'll find the other, and these two certainly were inseparable, at least at Brands Hatch in real life in the Road Sport Championship, and they're at it again. So I think they see each other more than do their wives or their girlfriends, because they're that close on track together at times. Heading into Coppice corner again, and it's Willis this time doing the chasing. They finished in this order. McConaughey ahead of Willis in the second race for the Road Sports when they were on the same grid as the 270Rs. I think Tom Willis might want to get him back for that if he can. He's going to try to do it on the run to the Fogarty S's, under brakes for the right-hander for the first part. And again, McConaughey smartly places the car right on the inside line where Willis can't aim for the apex, and he has to take the longer way through the chicane, which stops him a little bit slower, heading in off the exit and on towards Redgate again. There's 3 minutes to go. Willis looks one way, then the other, and again he's looking for that switch back to get the power on alongside. It might just work if he can get it along quick enough, which it does. Grabs another gear, and that was a pretty simple textbook move there from Tom Willis. He judged that one perfectly. He saw that McConaughey was going to go deep. He got him back for the Fogarty S's, put himself in exactly the right position, put the power down, plenty of grip, job done. He's into 4th place.
And now it's just a matter of, is that going to be able to stick until the end? Is that the position you want to be in? The toe in the sim isn't quite as powerful as in real life, and you can see here McConaughey, though, has the momentum once more as we head up into McLeod's again. It's just give and take, isn't it, all the time? A little advantage through one corner, or you have to take a slightly tighter line, and suddenly you lose the momentum through the rest of that next lap. So here we go. We've got Blair going up the inside, but now Willis will have the momentum coming out of the corner. So it's such a tricky balancing act to try and get past and make it stick, and really you just got to make it stick on the final lap, and that's it.
Whoever comes out on top, it's fantastic racing between the pair of them. They're constantly going back and forth, and again it's roles reversed because Willis has control of the apex through the corner, and it's now McConaughey that has to slow up and try and get himself back on the power again. He's in the slipstream, so he's kept close within that half a second, but he's not close enough as Tom was last time by to be able to try and make a move into Redgate. So he's going to have to wait at least by the end of this lap, possibly on the back straight, if he's quick enough to get through. But the question's got to be now is whether or not Tom's got enough pace to pull enough of a gap quickly enough to get himself out of draft range. And so far the answer is yes, because he is outside that half-second range that McConaughey needs to be within in order to gain a toe. He's now 6.5 tenths, nearly 7 tenths, which Willis has pulled out. So certainly Willis was getting a little bit stuck behind Blair, it seemed initially. Speaking of stuck, these guys are stuck together pretty close. This is Mark Bennett, who's having a great scrap here with the recovering Guy Crawford and Emil Jaselic, who I think was wide on the entry into the old hairpin, but he just hold on. And also Jaselic is under threat from, looks to me, that's Tom McEwing, who's trying to go around the outside. He's one of next year's Academy drivers for 2021, getting plenty of sim practice here against plenty of drivers which he may not end up racing for at least the next sort of 18-24 months or so, if he chooses to go that higher up the order. But he's getting used to what Caterham racing is like very much indeed, and he's now up the inside. He's about to be passed if he's not careful by David Rowe. Meanwhile, Mark Bennett is going to wheel with Guy Crawford, and that's over 8th positions. Now Emma Jaselic watches on. Rowe is also on the inside of Tom McEwing, so wherever you want to look, there's passes galore as they come onto the last lap of the race now with 30 seconds to go. Across the line they go once more, and now Jaselic got a toe on Crawford. Might help him on the run into Redgate corner, but sticking to the inside line is Mark Bennett. Jaselic turns in, finds the left rear of Mark Bennett in his way. Small little bit of contact, but he carries on. And so now the leaders are on to the last lap of the race. Again, it's been rather civilised at the front of the field, but behind them, fourth backwards, it's been absolute pandemonium.
Yeah, we saw that group of cars there. I'm not sure we'll see them in the same order, or even if some of them will get to the end at this rate. But yeah, I imagine the finishing order will not be the same there. But just to finish this race off, we should really just congratulate Stephen Master on a great performance. He had that one gap and he has not let it go for this whole race.
Well, as we said, the stat is usually whoever wins the first race will go on to win the second race, and that streak is not going to be broken because Steve McMaster comes to the line. He'll take his third clean sweep of the season, taking both wins from an evening's racing, and he does it in alternate race weekends as well, which is pretty funny because he did it at the first rounds, did it at the third rounds, and he's done it at the fifth rounds. Now then, across the line came Cherney and Murphy for second and third. Now for fourth and fifth, what happened there? Because Blair McConaughey came into shot sideways, going very slowly, so it looks as though there was a bit of battle at the end to finish off what happened. More shenanigans in the background, and that was possibly that was Mark Bennett that was involved in that, and he was also battling away, remember, with Jaselic and Tom McEwing and Guy Crawford, so plenty was going on as everyone goes mental at Redgate corner as you do, and across the line they go. We haven't got the benefit for replay, but I don't think you quite see this in real life in a Caterham race, but it's the benefit for sim that they can all go mad at turn one and not think about tyres or engines. But quite entertaining. They're all doing donuts, no matter where they finished.
We definitely saw, McConaughey had to slow down at that final corner after a cut warning, so that's what was happening there. We had the same thing happen with Mike Hilton in the background.
So, after another eventful race in the 420R Championship for caterhamracer.com, this is the order in which they finished. Pretty much the same top three as it was from race number 1. So Steve McMaster picks up his 3rd clean sweep of the season in both races, his 6th win of the season. He will maintain his points lead heading to the championship finale at Snetterton in just a couple of weeks' time. Jaroslav Cherny picks up 2nd place ahead of James Murphy in 3rd. Tom Willis survives an incredible battle in the last few laps with his old sparring partner Glenn McConaughey, as Willis picks up 4th. James Fowler picks up 5th after a mishap for Glenn McConaughey and a slowdown for him as well, dropped him to 6th position. And it's Andrew Parker in 7th, Guy Crawford in 8th, Emma Cheselink in 9th, and Tom McEwing in 10th after some more shenanigans towards the bottom of the top 10 on that last corner. 11th for Tim Van Heat, 12th for Mike Hilton, 13th for Steve Arnell, 14th for Mark Bennett, who again had some issues where he had a spin on the exit of the chicane. A race to forget, really, for David Rowe, down to 15th at the end of that, so more problems he fell into in the last couple of races. And it was Chris Skillicorn, and of course we had no Paul Thornhalf and no Andy Steele, who were both not present this evening. So, again, I think eventful is the understatement we could talk about with that one, Chris, but first impressions on what was two very interesting races and two very entertaining races nonetheless, regardless of what went on, good, bad, and otherwise. And certainly it does show us a bit more of a clearer picture heading to Snetterton, where Steve McMaster now holds all the cards in terms of the championship lead, I'm sure including on drop scores. So now it's all down to him to see if he can get the job done at the next time out for the final rounds in Norfolk.
Yeah, that was full on pressure, wasn't it, from in that first race, and he really did have to put up with that pressure, but dealt with it extremely well. Got in front, and then Cherny just lost out in those final few laps. David Rowe obviously had a fairly reasonably good first race, but wasn't able to continue that. Got sort of stuck in that midfield, and then there's a bit of contact here and there caused him to drop all the way back down the field. So yeah, definitely a second race to forget on those. But McMaster, absolutely dominant in that race, and good job.
Absolutely so. Right, it's your favourite part of the evening, isn't it? Which you get to put your Martin Brundle hat on for a moment and go and wander down the virtual pit lane, see who you can have a chat to in terms of drivers that took part tonight. I'm pretty sure if he's around, you'll want to have a quick word with that man on screen right there. Points leader Steve McMaster. So once again, Chris, off you go. Let's see who we can find.
Well, hopefully we can stick a microphone under that virtual helmet there. Steve, you got us?
Hey, how you doing, boys?
Now that was that first race, absolutely incredible, breathless from start to finish, and I bet it felt like that in the cockpit as well.
I don't think I breathed for about 7 in the middle of that race. There was one lap where we were side by side for the majority of the lap. It was, great racing, right? We're really super clean, and all credit to Jaroslav and James as well. Just fantastic racing.
Yeah, and then in the second race, just a little break at the front there as people behind started going side by side and never looked back.
Yeah, James has got a major check in the post for letting me gap him by about a second. And then I think once I've got about a second, or anyone's got about a second, there's kind of a bit of a break in the toe as well, which means that he just doesn't catch back up when we're in fresh air. The gap after that seemed to be pretty constant, and it was just about trying to keep lap times within half a tenth or a tenth of each other and just keep the gap going.
Yeah, I think all we can say is congratulations. That's a really good result for the championship as well, and heading into the final round at Snetterton, that must put you in a fairly dominant position.
Listen, I've been really focusing just race by race and trying to ignore the whole championship thing, but you're right, now that we're down to the last race, it's kind of mine to lose to a certain extent, so there's a bit of pressure going into Snet, but again, treat it the same, go in, just concentrate on each session and see how we go.
I think that's it. Congratulations. We shall see you in a few weeks, and hopefully next week in the Academy cars as well, for more of the same.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for everything you're doing. Cheers.
Whew, breathless. I'm sort of, there's seems to be a dearth of people in the pit lane at the moment. We can get in James Murphy as a regular into the commentary booth. James, Steve's just said he owes you a check for that second race, and I think he's probably right.
Yeah, it was too nerve-wracking in the first race, being so close in line of stern. I don't know how we all got around in one piece. It was a brilliant race, and then second race I thought I'd send it a little bit early and see if I could get myself properly in the mix and maybe even sort of get ahead and run them at my pace rather than their pace. But no, I got forced a bit wide, but it was enough also to send Cherney and make a little bit of a gap, I think, as we went into the chicane. And so yeah, Steve did what Steve does, and he just reeled out the laps, didn't he?
But like you say, after that first race, I guess the second race was actually nice, relaxing, chill out session. I mean, that first race on stream looked brilliant, and I'm guessing it felt pretty good from the cockpit as well.
It did. It was an exercise in desperately trying to have no contact, and we were going at a qualifying pace all the way around, and it was within a second, and it was just an exercise in trying not to hit each other. To be honest, those guys were brilliant. I mean, I just sat behind, you saw, but I think Cherney and Steve deserve all the plaudits for that, overtaking each other multiple times. Fantastic race. I'm looking forward to watching it back, because although I might have looked like I had a grandstand seat, I was otherwise occupied.
We used your onboard camera a couple of times, as it was the best view in the house. So thank you for that.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. If it brings home podiums and points, feel free to do it next time round as well, mate.
Cheers, man, and we'll see you next time out.
Forward to it. See you then. Bye.
Good stuff.
Always entertaining to have a chat to our frontrunners, particularly Steve McMaster and James Murphy, who always seem to enjoy themselves on track no matter what's happening. So there is James Murphy's 420R, very well used tonight, but two very valuable third places, which will almost certainly have helped him leap into the top three in the championship. So final thoughts from Donington then. It was a night where once again Steve McMaster pretty much just did what he needed to do, but of course, as we say, the result sheets don't always tell the full story, and whilst it might show that, yes, granted, the second race was fairly easy pretty much from the get-go, the first race certainly wasn't, and it might well give us a bit of indications to the kind of racing we could expect when we head to Norfolk virtually in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, it's not easy, coming in that dominant position and being able to do the job, especially under that relentless pressure from race one. So, yeah, can't emphasise enough how that's very impressive and a good sign for the championship, because I think tonight was key, and now the balance of possibilities is definitely in his favour. But still, there's plenty of, once we get all the scores added up and the drop scores taken into account, it's always closer than you expect. But yeah, nevertheless, he's got the advantage, and I'm sure everyone else would prefer to be in his shoes than chasing.
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of chasing going on for everyone, as Steve McMaster will be the one that is to be chased, of course, when it comes to the championship battle. But of course, we're not leaving Donington just yet, because of course we are getting up to the build-up of the real-world Caterham Motorsport spots, which is a stop on the calendar, which is coming up on the 17th and 18th of October. But before that, on the same week, of course, we have the race coming up for the Academy cars, where we'll see most of the same drivers once again. 13th of October, same time, 8:30 BST, and they'll be heading out once again. But for the 420Rs, the final time we'll see them for this first point scoring season will, of course, be on the 20th of October, as the rounds come in pretty quick succession. 20th of October, again at 8:30 for the 420Rs, to see if Steve McMaster can wrap up the 420R title after two more dominant wins once again. And so, of course, heading into the final couple of rounds is going to be quite exciting, but of course, it couldn't be done without our very valuable sponsors. So as we say, wrap up from another fantastic evening of caterhamracer.com 420R racing in the 420R Championship, there's just enough time to mention, of course, that the championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, which is high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. For design and display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And of course by Avon Tyres. On road, on track, on Avons, the tyre supplier, officially tyre supplier of Caterham Motorsport. Once again, from myself, Scott Woodwiss, and from Chris Hutchinson and everyone else involved in caterhamracer.com, thank you for watching, and catch us next week, same time, for the penultimate rounds of the Virtual Academy Championship for this 2020 season. But until then, take care, stay safe and stay well, and we'll see you next time next week for the Academy cars. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.